and Yang Mulia Tengku Dato Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz as a speaker to enlighten us on bridging the gap between today's youth and the corporate world. Dato has an immense amount of knowledge on finance and banking, having graduated from the University of Bristol in Economics and Accounting, and obtained his Masters in Finance and Economics from the University of Exeter. Who better to talk about ways to reduce disparity between the students today and the world of finance, business and economy than the chairman of Kuala Lumpur Business Club. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a huge round of applause to Yang Mulia Tengku Dato Zafrul.
It's always tough to be the last speaker for today, but I understand there's another one, and I was told that everyone started at 8 in the morning today. So well done for still being in the room on a Saturday afternoon. Again, I'm very familiar with UKAC. I was part of the founding members of UKAC when it was started. I was in my second year in Bristol University at that time. No, in fact, first year in Bristol University at that time. And I'm glad that it still exists today. We had a few social projects even during my time. One of it was called Project Kalsom. I'm not sure whether it's still in existence today. It was named after one of the ladies that we helped in Pahang. Anyway, let me start my speech. Let me start by quoting a famous Spanish painter, Pablo Picasso, who once observed that youth has no age. I think what Picasso was getting at was that youth is largely a state of mind. For example, I think myself as a young man, I'm in my 30s still. In fact, it's my last year as a 30-something. So although many of you are probably in your 20s here, but biological age marches on relentlessly, and that we can't change. So I remember when I first graduated, I was an idealistic young man, had big plans upon graduating, namely to make a big success and then make a comfortable living. I was, of course, hoping to achieve this while maintaining my lifestyle of meeting up with friends regularly and still having fun, just like the days when we were in university, something all of you are familiar with. Sacrifices, I probably didn't give that too much thought, as I was armed with a degree, and that piece of paper was supposed to get me through the doors. Well, suffice to say, that piece of paper, although give me a head start, it did not mean automatic entry into the corporate world. It's a free pass to the top rungs of the ladder. This is more so in today's world where everyone has a degree. You see, when I returned after graduating, that was in 1995, the job market was a challenging one. After working for a few years, we were hit by the Asian crisis in 1997. I had many friends and bosses, actually, who got retrenched. I was safe at that time only because my salary was less than what we have to pay for the Bloomberg machine, the Bloomberg terminal. So that's how, as a fresh graduate, the Bloomberg terminal at that time cost $3,000 a month. I think I earned less than that, so I was safe from the retrenchment. Anyway, as the economic situation worsened, I decided that it would probably be better to take a break. So I went on to do my master's. At that time, again, it was back to United Kingdom. And then when I came back, the crisis was over, and I started my career again. But this time was even more difficult than before. And there were some lessons that I learned during my break. You see, I had plans actually to make a lot of money upon graduating. I had friends who even started business straight away. We all wanted to move up fast. They would see the potential. I was hoping that they would see the potential and I would rise to the top of the corporate ladder at no time at all. But guess what? It's not that easy. We have a few of us who are lucky, but really during that time we had a lot of challenges. So it's been many years now since I graduated. I think about 16 or 17 years now. Although many things have changed, some things remain the same. You You see, no matter how well or not well you do in school and university, there will be other factors at play, and you know what they say about the best laid plans. As I mentioned before, there is the job market. It may not always be in your favor, and if you manage to land a job in your desired field, you then have to prove yourself there. It's a never-ending journey, and while it may be challenging, it is essential to your success. Getting your foot in the door is the first hurdle that you need to jump. And unfortunately, some organizations don't make it easy for young graduates to cross their threshold. I've heard some people complain that fresh graduates must be trained. They don't have the necessary experience. They must have their hands held and guided step by step. It may be unfair, but some organizations may be inclined to think of the youth as a burden with no training. Time and money have to be invested in them. And let's face it, spending money is not something that organizations love doing, unless you're Maybank. So we have a problem. On the one hand, we have youth who are eager to learn, who are eager to join the workforce, and on the other, organizations that are not keen to take them on. There is an evident gap there, and something must be done to close the gap. And if we want to take our economy to even greater heights, we need to close this gap. There is a view, a wrong view, I must say, that fresh graduates are unskilled, lack exposure to real-world challenges, and are not dependable, and sometimes too picky about available jobs. This may actually apply to some, but it definitely does not apply to all of us. It is unfair to lump all youth in the same category when there are those out there willing to put in the necessary work and hours. I believe that we have here not just a gap between the youth and the corporate world, but also a gap between the different generations. The older generation must remember that they were once young too and had to deal with their own older generation, who may also have unfairly or categorized them as lazy, picky, and so on. And the younger generation must remember that things won't just fall onto your laps. You must be willing to work and prove yourselves. I, for one, think that fresh young minds breathe new life into an organization. Yes, you need to have the patience to train them and support them while they're in their learning stages. But if you do it well, they will be sound investments. And we have a few of them here with me today. I remember reading somewhere about a manager who didn't want to send his people for training. Reasoning with the boss, he said, but what if they leave after we train them? And the boss replies, and what if we don't and they stay? So as with any investment, there are risks that you have to consider, but you need to weigh them out carefully and decide on the risks worth taking. The corporate world today needs to take chance on our youth, and the youth today must prove themselves worthy of the risk. We need to close the gap between the two by opening up our minds and getting rid of our preconceived notions of each other. I would urge the organizations to take on young executives, as everyone has to start somewhere. After all, no one got to where they are today by being experienced to begin with. I know I had to pay my dues and put in the hours required while building them up during the last 16 years. And I believe that the young ones who are worth their salt will be great contributors to any organizations. Are they picky about jobs? I wouldn't call it being picky. I would call it knowing what they want and holding out for it. Unless you're not willing to take on any job apart from being a board member or a CEO of a company, then you're being picky. I would like to appeal to the corporates out there to help our youth to build up their self-esteem as well as their self-confidence. Give them direction and help them to grow and work with integrity and excellence. The youth associations, youth policies, and youth leadership events like today are essential if we are going to address the concerns and aspirations of young people, and are indeed vital to bridging the gap between the youth and the corporate world. I would like to take this opportunity now to address the youth, all of you who are present here today. The Malaysian youth are growing up in a diverse society in which your choices and opportunities are increasingly influenced by the power of the global economies, as well as the issues like political uncertainties and fast-changing new technologies. It is clear that in this changing world, our country's most valuable resource will be its people and your ability to lead and influence change. People around you tell you about the gifts you have to take, the gifts you have to make the vision a reality, but you can't hear them yet, but you will. It takes time, not days or months, but years, even decades. So you need to be patient. Right now, not knowing your gifts, you are certain on how to proceed. Perhaps you think you need more resources, more money, more skills, more time, more of whatever you don't have right now to get started right away. Whatever you can do to begin, start it now. Believe me, I have heard every excuse in the book. So as you begin your small step, your baby steps, as you fall on your face and get up hurting from the pain to try again, something mysterious happens. You begin to hear the voices you couldn't before. So you begin to see your gifts and use them. And that light shimmering on the distant horizons gets clearer. It's always within you to be able to walk, to run, and to soar. All of life is just a decision of whether to sit or to get up and walk through that door. So it's the decision that's hard. The doing part is easier. Take your time and make the right decision, not the comfortable one. Take years, because once you decide you are fully behind your dream, you will get there. I believe that we are already at the start of something that is very new and very exciting and very positive for all of us here today. Although we are only midway through this summit, there is already a real buzz of energy and ideas as I walked in. I came slightly earlier. As I was outside, and I was mingling with a few of the young students, and I can feel that, you know, despite being here for the last close to 10 hours, the energy is still here today. So we today are being offered more freedom, especially the young Malaysians, an opportunity that was ever dreamt of in the 20th century. Of course, there were exceptions. During the early part of this century, the general feelings of adults towards youth was that they were to be seen and not to be heard. In the latter part of the century, they began to speak out against what they felt was wrong. Today, your new ideas and concepts are being embraced and are opening in the eyes of many adults, making them aware that you, young Malaysians, are the future. But all of us have the power, indeed an obligation, to remain young in spirit and outlook for all of our lives, to have an inquiring mind, to be energetic, to be adaptable to change, to be geared to lifelong learning, to be passionate. I have no doubt that some of you here are fueled by passion, something deep within you that perhaps took a long time to get out, and you're proceeding. There are some of you who have a dream of some incredible vision within you, a vision which, if unleashed unto the world, would impact others greatly. Look at Facebook, for example. Although I must say, don't look at the IPO performance of Facebook. We know that this is often the innovation and talent of Malaysian youth which drives success in our economic and intellectual sectors. We also see you as the key to promoting understanding between people from different backgrounds and building consensus between communities. So we need to encourage you to bring your ambition and energy into the workplace. I believe this is why all of you are here today, and this is why I'm here today as well. I wish you all a fruitful time at the summit, spending time with the speakers, panelists, as well as your colleagues and your university colleagues. May you glean some truth, be inspired, and spread the goodwill you have cultivated during the next 2 days, during today and tomorrow. As young leaders and future decision makers, you play an important role in shaping the future of Malaysia. Let me leave you with this thought from Ralph Emerson. Do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. Your future is in your hand, no one else's, so seize this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yang Mulia, for a wonderful speech. Yang Mulia, since you mentioned about Project Kalsom, I'm honored to tell you that the next Project Kalsom for this year is happening next week in Sarawak. And over the years, Project Kalsom has grown bigger and has been helping out a lot of students in rural villages. Yang Mulia, before I open the floor to questions, I would like to ask you one question. Your rise in the corporate world has been an inspiration to a lot of aspiring young leaders. What is your advice to these young leaders?
I mentioned in the speech, I think, I was just kidding. But my advice would be to do what you think is right, to follow your gut feeling. It might not be always right. I've done many things which have helped shape my career, and not all of the decisions that I made was right. And for example, I've tried to being an entrepreneur for 2 years. It was very difficult that I decided to go back into in the financial sector.
Yang Mulia, one more question. If you could change one thing in your life, what would that be?
I want to switch from supporting Liverpool to Manchester City. No, but I'm still supporting Liverpool for one more season. One more season.
One last try, Yang Mulia.
No regrets yet. To answer your, I mean, one thing I've so far, if you start thinking that way, then you will start being a bit more pessimistic about things and all that. So you just, there will be a lot of challenges and failures along the way. So you try you try to learn from it, but not let it get to you too much, or else it's going to be harder for you to continue and fight some of the new challenges that you will face.
Thank you, Yang Mulia. I'll now open questions to the floor.
Yang Mulia, my name is Yahya. I'm from University of Malaya. Okay, I just read some of bio just now that you are like jumping from few institutions, like to name a few, Maybank, ECM Avenue. Now you are Maybank. So I wonder why did you jump few different institutions, and also as a person where you are now, what keeps you awake at night? Thank you.
I'll take another.
I'm a master's student from Monash University. My question is, Yang Mulia, see, I'm doing masters and I'm 21 years old right now. I want to know, I was told to do my masters because degree is not good enough. My question is, what exactly is the corporate world looking for? And what makes a graduate marketable or an asset to the companies? Thank you.
Of times. In fact, some might say that if you have the kind of CV I have, employers will be worried, because after, usually they were hoping that you stay for at least 3 years in one job, and the longest I've been is probably 4 years in my second job. So obviously, if I'm reading a CV like that, trying to recruit someone, it does concern me. But what's important, I think, is to understand why people leave, and also to make sure that they leave for the right reason. They're moving up and not lateral. Because when you look at someone's CV and they're moving from manager to manager or manager to just senior manager, then you notice that perhaps this guy is not thinking long term. But for me, everyone is unique, obviously. But for me, as a person, I would have stayed longer in Avenue ECM. But at the time, my contract expired, and Ministry of Finance was the shareholder at the time, and I was the managing director. And at the time, after the acquisition, the new shareholder had different plans. So I left to join Citigroup. So I was in Citigroup for a year, only a year. I was the head of investment banking for Citigroup. Again, that was the one I mentioned earlier. Then I thought, at that age, I wanted to try to be an entrepreneur. So I took a 2-year so-called sabbatical and jumped into it. It was a company called Tune Money. It's part of Tony Fernandez's Tune Group. So I had a small 10% stake, managed to get CIMB in 20% stake. And the majority is obviously Tony and Kamarudin Rano through Tune Ventures. I tried it for 2 years. Tune Money basically sells insurance online, debit card. It was difficult. We were hit by the 2008 crisis. I think the whole group was going to focus money everywhere else. But again, it was a good experience for me. Like I said, it didn't work, but it didn't. So I went back into being financial sector. Again, I was in Kenanga. I was running the Kenanga Investment Group. And I was the ED also of the Kenanga Investment Bank. And then Maybank, being a much larger organization, after serving contract in Kenanga, when I was given the opportunity to join Maybank. So that's when, again, I made that jump to become Maybank Investment Bank CEO. And now, we are a regional bank over 11 countries. So it's a different experience. I must say, I've gone through up and down as well. Like I said, I would have stayed in one company, it was taken over. I would have stayed being an entrepreneur, but I failed. And then now, being back to where I think, where I started. I started as an investment bank. I started in M Bank as a corporate finance, and move on to Credit Agricole also as a stockbroker. So in the end, I'm back to where I was years ago. What keeps me awake at night is my wife, because I've got a 6 months baby, and whenever she wants to feed the baby, she makes sure I'm awake as well. Something you're not familiar with yet. Hopefully not yet. But really what keeps me awake at night, nothing really at the moment, because you work so during the day, you get so tired. Sometimes when you have a big pitch, when you have a big deal to do or to announce the next day, that it keeps you awake. But that's only on project basis. But on a day-to-day basis, nothing really keeps me awake at night. The second question from a lady who's 21 years old, who's doing her master's. She's 18 years younger than me. Okay. Well, degree is not good enough. I don't think so, really, because having degree and doing master's straight away, I'm sorry to say this to you, but it is definitely an advantage. But work experience is still, people will still take someone with a degree and someone with a master's, but if they both have no experience, the chances are that they will still look at it both individuals on the same basis. But yes, it's getting tougher. For us, I can't say for the other sectors, but for the financial sector, having a master's degrees and having a bachelor degrees, without any work experience, we will look at them in the same way. So being marketable is important, but really, I think that it's more value add to do the master's MBA after you have 2 or 3 years of work. But having said that, I've spoken to some of my friends who are engineers and all that. That's different. I'm not talking about the technical field, where sometimes you continue to do your master's right after your 3 years. But for if you want to do MBA, definitely you should do. But if you want to do specialization, financial, there is specialization like MSc in financial or financial investment management and all that, and the stats and all. Then definitely you are encouraged to do a master's. But for MBA, I would strongly recommend that you have at least 2 to 3 years of work before proceeding. Thank you.
The gentleman in the middle.
Good afternoon, Tengku. Tengku, based on my experience engaging with corporate representatives throughout career fairs and gala dinners, often or not I found out that when corporate reveal fresh grad just graduating out from colleges or university, so long as you don't fall under the big four, i.e. commerce, finance, accounting and engineer, it is hard for you to even get an interview to actually got into the corporate world, mainly because the corporate world doesn't understand what students from arts and social science actually offer skills, because when you look at an engineer, you know what he's been trained throughout the 3 or 4 years. Where you look at the liberal arts students, you think that he pretty much chose arts because he can't go into science stream in SPM. So my question is, Tengku, do you believe that there is a need for you as the chairman of KO Business Club to actually urge corporate to give a chance for students from arts and social science background to actually have a chance in the interview to actually impress you guys with our wonderful character and our brilliant minds, so that we actually have a fair chance to actually prove ourselves in the corporate world? Thank you, Tengku. And one more point. Carol will score next season. So yeah.
All right. Let's take the gentleman behind on my left-hand side.
Good evening, Tengku. My question is, when do you think Maybank IB will be able to compete with the top investment banking around the world? Thank you.
How the corporate sector view graduates of doing certain degrees that are not the traditional degrees. That I think have changed for us anyway in the financial sector. But by and large, it really doesn't matter what degree you do. It really matters how you perform, how well you do in the university. And I must say, corporates do tend to be a bit biased towards top universities. They always have a preference. By what I mean by top universities are universities that they look at as tier 1. But at the end of the day, when you actually have the interview, all of us will not really look at the CV anymore. Once you pass the door, it's really how you perform during the interview. But I guess the challenge, the one you are talking about, the one you raised earlier, is how to get through that door first before even having the interview. There is a certain biasness, I think, towards degrees which are more traditional in nature, like what you said, engineering, law, economics, or accounting even, and the social sciences degrees. They tend to attract different kind of jobs within the corporate sector. They might be able to join as management trainees first and all that, but not directly to the relevant departments that you are trying to get into. This I think has got a lot to do with education of the managers. On our side, in Maybank as well, I noticed that some of the recruitment policies and all that have also changed because there is a perception about even today, if you're an engineer, you can't be you can't be an investment banker, for example. That's the perception. In fact, that is what they understand it to be. But really, if you look at globally, that has changed. And I think it's a matter of time before we in Malaysia will have to start looking at it more objectively, be a bit more open. And at the end of the day, to me, it really depends on how well you do university. And the other thing that I must tell all of you today is that the CVs that we are getting are very impressive CVs. People are doing very well in universities. So what also matters is the things that they do outside university. The kind of social service they do, co-curriculum activities that they do, the sports that they do. Those help in getting you through that door. Because competition is getting very stiff. I don't think during my time was as stiff as it is today. So that's my advice to you. I mean, try to do other things outside university as well. Like organizing this event, for example, that's one positive thing. Being involved in clubs or societies like UKC or in your universities, doing social work and all that. Those will count.
Okay, thank you, Tengku.
Thank you. About Carroll, I heard he might be leaving. I'm not sure. But he did play well in the Euro Cup. But again, England going past the group stages is already a miracle. Maybank IB around the world, we are targeting ASEAN first. We are present in 11 countries. We are present in all countries in ASEAN except for Cambodia and Myanmar. We've done well today in Malaysia. I'm happy to announce that the first 6 months, January to June this year, we are the officially number one investment bank in Malaysia. We are number one for ECM, M&A, for the IPOs, for the bond, for the loan. It's the first time ever for Maybank IB. I know CIMB is one of the sponsors for UKC event today. But again, maybe next year UKC can consider the real number one investment bank in Malaysia. Okay, any other questions?
The gentleman in the middle.
University. The first question is, looking at the status quo, I mean, looking at the state of affairs, there are many, there's a phenomena where many of our prominent corporate figures who join politics, such as the former CEO for Cycle Encourage, Dato Sri Muhammad Hassan, who is now Menteri Besar for Negeri Sembilan, and Tan Sri Khalid Ibrahim, former CEO of PNB and Gatri, and now is Menteri Besar for Selangor. And how do you see that the corporate figure adaptability to the political system? Because running a state is not like running a corporation where they are making profit. And my second question is, if you were given a chance, would you follow the footsteps of your former boss, Tan Sri Aziz, and be part of our administration system? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Since a difficult one, so can I answer this first before the next question? Corporate figures joining thing, like you mentioned earlier, the current Menteri Besar of Negeri Sembilan and the current Menteri Besar of Selangor. And going forward, I'm sure there will be a lot more. In fact, I think you have one person here just now, Dato Ahmad Zaki, who's now also a ED of Johor Corp, who's also, I believe, in UMNO Youth Exco. So whether they are able to adapt, is very hard to say. Obviously, profit maximization is not the objective of party. They have a lot of other consideration. There are a lot of other stakeholders. But it's really, I can't give you a firm view, as I'm not really involved in the politics world. But as an outsider, as a third party, I believe that some of the training involved in running a corporation must have helped for them to run their office, the state, for example. How well they're doing, we'll know soon. Elections coming up, so let's see whether they survive the election. On my contribution to whether corporate figures will also help out in national service, doing national service at a higher scale, like Tan Sri Amir Sham. He's now chairman of MIDA, as you know. I am also, I've just been appointed as a board member of MIDA, so I am doing what I can to assist in some of the at the national level by helping out. Okay, any other questions?
The lady in the front.
Thank you. Good evening from University of Nottingham, Malaysia campus. I have a question for you, Tengku. Having worked with the new workforce of Generation Y, what is your opinion on us? And if there is something in us that you think we should change, what is it and how we should change it? Thank you.
The gentleman in the middle.
Good evening, I'm Arif. I'm currently studying in University of Bristol. My question is, if you are given a chance to go back in time after your postgraduate studies, will you choose to remain in UK and work there, or will you choose to come back to Malaysia and serve your country? Thank you. I mean, basically, whether will you choose, if you are given a chance to go back.
Oh, to go back again.
Yeah,
which one would I?
Yeah, which one do you prefer?
Okay. On working with Generation Y, on my opinion of Generation Y, I'm assuming all of you are Generation Y still. No. Are you still Generation Y? Yes. Okay. I thought Generation Y was your seniors are Generation Y, but I guess you still are Generation Y. What my view, I think really, I've got two colleagues who ladies there, so standing there talking, not listening to me. In our office, we always take, in my office, in the CEO's office, we always have a few of these Generation Y fresh graduates. I must say that it has been very good experience for me to work with them. They've been very resourceful. I noticed that this is in general true, especially among the top Generation Y students. They are able to think out of the box, and definitely they are able to adapt to a lot of new things that I wouldn't have seen, which I didn't experience in a way. The work ethic is very good. So really, what I'm trying to say here is, I don't see anything negative about the people that work around me. But of course, I've heard negative things, but I'm not. It's not a first-hand experience for me. But we're looking at, in general, within the group, we've seen quite a number of people joining us as management trainees, and we also see quite a number of people who don't make it. The main reason, according to our group HR, is because they are unwilling to work long hours. I don't know whether it is true, but because the one that works with me, they do work long hours. The reason why they are able to work long hours is because there is a bit more belief that you need to have a balanced life in general. Maybe not the people in this room who's here on a Saturday afternoon, but you know, people in general do want to have a more balanced life. They don't like to work until 12 midnight every day during a project. They don't like to be working weekends. That's one thing about Generation Y in general. But again, this is just a general observation. I've got no stats or whatsoever. So it's just an empirical view from where I'm sitting in the office. So basically what you need to do to change is really, you need to actually, during these early years is the years that I think you need to put in the hours. You need to have, if you want to move faster, you got to work longer hours so that you don't have to work. So someone with a 3 years experience, if you work very hard, long hours, and spending a lot of time focusing on the work, you actually will be doing 1 year work, but equivalent to someone else's 3 years of work experience. The other question from my alumni, Bristol, I was also from Bristol. If I was given a chance to think, to look at whether to come back or not, my answer is I would have come back, obviously. Unless I don't have a job right now, then I will say I want to go stay there. But really, if you are in UK right now, what's happening in Europe and all that, also in America, I'm talking about the economy, we are also seeing a lot of people my batch or around my generation who are also coming back to Malaysia. It's good, Johor American from, what do you call it, Talent Corp also seeing the same thing. So even on our side, now we're operating as a regional investment bank. We have a lot of Malaysians coming back to even work with us, not just here in Malaysia, but also in Singapore and also in Hong Kong from UK, especially from UK. So with the hindsight, of course, you know, I'll say that I think I made the right decision to stay. And if I've given a chance to decide again, definitely I will have come back. Thank you.
The gentleman on your left-hand side. Yeah.
Hello, Assalamualaikum. Okay, that being said, the co-curricular activities that you said just now will help the students. But at the end of the day, we see that most of the big companies are just accepting the CV or the resume from the universities or from the students that are attained a good result or good CGPA. With that being said, with the current status quo, does co-curricular activities matter to the person with the average result to get the chance as well? Thank you very much.
You're saying that big corporates, being an average student helps, is that?
Yes.
That's right. It definitely helps. We do look at, again, I'm talking about the financial sector. I'm not so sure about the legal or the other industries, oil and gas and power, because I heard from my colleague. I've got a good friend who runs Westport. I'm not sure whether he's one of the speakers, Ruben Ganalingam. He said that his company policy is not to take anyone who has first class or second upper. That's the Westport policy, because when they do look at someone who gets 2-1, which is probably CGPA of 4 and above, they find that they don't find a job challenging after a year or two, and they leave, and they train these people. So different corporates will have different philosophy of recruitment. But again, it all depends on the job. So for us, we have a tendency, unfortunately, to look at, for Maybank, especially on investment bank, we do look at good universities and good results. The average students must be super in doing, national sports. I mean, super sportsman or someone who's done a lot of social service. Then definitely they have a chance. Well, we have, in fact, on our investment bank, we have two people who've won quite a number of gold medals in the SEA Games, for example. But they're not top student. They're not even. But we do look at a certain type of character, because it's important in a team that you have a good mixture. So there will always be a quota for the people who don't perform so well, but they have a very strong skill set in other areas. Thank you.
The gentleman on my right.
Tengku, which world should we opt to when students like us, when we graduate? Which world, the government or the private world, should we go for after the graduate, and what are the benefits, if you can give us?
Okay. You're saying that whether we should join the public sector or the private sector, should I join the government service or... I'm in one, I'm in a GLC. I'm actually a government scholar, I'm a JPA scholar, so when I first came back, I didn't have a choice. I registered for PTD, signed up, and then at that time, they didn't come back to me. Maybe they didn't want me yet. After 6 months, there was a policy, if they don't call you back in 6 months, you can continue. So that's what I did. So I went to join M Investment Bank. Really, it's up to you. This is a personal choice. Some people do it because they feel that they want to contribute in different ways. And some people even join GLC despite having other opportunities in the multinational companies, in the multinationals. So really it's up to their personal individual choice. But what's important is, I think, you make sure that you have the right experience when you join, even the private sector. If the civil sector, if the public sector gives you a bit better exposure, because now you're building a foundation. So experience matters. Don't just look at what the total compensation, what the salary is going to be, because traditionally, and I think it still is now, public sector pays less than the private sector. But sometimes the public sector gives you a lot more experience, and being in the public sector for 3 to 5 years, and then going back, then joining the private sector can bring you a lot of value to the private sector, and then you should usually be well rewarded. And I've seen that with quite a few of my colleagues.
Yang Mulia, before we end the session, let me ask you one last question. If you had to choose your replacement for your current position in Maybank, what criteria would you look for in that person?
Well, I'll make sure that he earns more than me, because I'm underpaid right now. Really, right now the schedule is very tight. I'm only in Malaysia on Monday and Tuesday, or Thursday or Friday, depending on which countries I'm in that week. Even like last week, I was in Malaysia only on Friday, and next week I'll be again in Malaysia only for 2 days. And this will go on throughout the year, because we're running 11 countries, 11 markets, not easy. So I need someone who's mobile. I will look at someone who's mobile. I noticed that a lot of us are getting used to this, a lot more mobile. I must say my counterparts in Singapore are less mobile. They tend to, in fact, most of the Singaporean companies and foreign banks are looking at Malaysians, because Malaysians are seen as very mobile. They're able to adapt to different economies and different societies better. That means you need to be someone who can adapt. Work-wise, work ethics, most of my colleagues, they understand how much commitment is required. But I think of all the most important attribute that I will look for is really integrity. Because in our business, integrity is very important. We manage a lot of money. As you know, for us, I'm on the credit committee, and our assets under management, asset under the Maybank Group is 100 billion US. So if you don't have the integrity, you can really misuse. Of course, there's check and balance, and there's risk management, and compliance, and all that. But again, it's not easy if you don't have the integrity. So I think that's the most important part. And the rest of the attributes, most of you probably, you will be trained. I mean, really, in university, most of the things you learn, you will not be adapting it. It's the training that you'll be adapting. It's the discipline, the way you look at things. That's what you will be adapting in working life, not what you learn, because things change very fast. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yang Mulia. I would now pass it back to the MC.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to invite UKC's chairman, Shawal Hafiz, to give a token of appreciation to Yang Mulia.